something that's really big for us is building community.
Right.
Right. And that we're all a part of the community and we all bring different things to the community. And you may have a different skill or background or culture or belief or knowledge or something than I do.
Yeah.
And it's how do we all work together? Because the best classroom management, the best belonging, and the more they belong, the less classroom management you're going to have, right? Is when it's as part of a community. Right. I know that that's not going to happen every day in a class of 12-year-olds or 17-year-olds, but it can under the right circumstances. And so when we build community where all of us know the same expectations, we help build the expectations. We come to consensus over many of the expectations. I think it makes a huge difference because you have a community who wants to do well and doesn't want to disappoint their friends, doesn't want to disappoint their colleagues. It's not about compliance anymore.
Right.
It's about maintaining my belongingness in this community.
So welcome everyone. Welcome to Trauma Club's podcast. We've been talking a lot about what students are learning, but today we're diving into the how and the why. And specifically, how do we move beyond a classroom of quiet compliance and into a culture of deep, authentic student engagement? And to help us unpack this, I'm joined by a leader who truly lives this work. Dr. Laurie Barron is the superintendent of Evergreen School District in Kalispell, Montana. Her accolades are extensive. She was the 2013 National Middle Level Principal of the Year. And most recently, she was named the 2025 to 2026 Montana Superintendent of the Year. She's also a celebrated author of books like We Belong and her brand new 2026 release, Expect, Engage, and Empower. Dr. Barron, it is an absolute pleasure to have you here with us, and thank you for taking out the time to be here and actually talk to our audience about all of this.
Yeah, thank you so much. Honored to be here with you.
So I think before we begin, I would love to know a little bit about you and would love for the world to know a little bit about you. What has been your guiding force to be a part of the schooling system?
You know, I had different plans when I was in high school. In my senior year in high school, I took an advanced placement English literature class that I just loved. And midway through my senior year in high school, I decided I was going to be an English teacher like she was. And so changed my focus before I ever even got to college and majored in English education. I thought I would be an English teacher my whole career. I loved teaching high school English, just very joyful and still miss it. I still communicate with so many students that I taught now years ago. And then not sure how it all kind of crazy happened. I ended up becoming a middle school assistant principal. I say unwillingly. I didn't realize they would really move me. I didn't want anything to do with middle school. I was a high school person. And then I ended up getting moved to a middle school principalship, again, unwillingly. That wasn't what I was looking for. And then somewhere in there, I just fell in love with middle school. And I fell in love with that whole idea of, I don't know, really believing in kids. And when things don't work, sometimes it's changing us, not them. And had the opportunity to be a part of just an incredible turnaround as a middle school principal and worked with a staff that just really believed in kids. And then kids started believing in themselves. And we just saw incredible increases when we increased our expectations and they were real and they were valid and they were supported. Student engagement changed. Mm-hmm. And when student engagement changed, kids started believing in themselves. And then we saw improvement in achievement and it was just incredible. And then my family and I had vacationed for years in beautiful Northwest Montana in Glacier National Park. And we had planned to retire here. And I was 17 years into my career in the same district in Georgia. I probably don't sound like I'm from Montana. Right before I lost my mother to stage 4 kidney cancer, she encouraged me not to wait to follow my dream until I retired. And that I should go to Montana now and not wait till retirement. And I told my mom she was crazy. I was like, no one's coming after me in Montana. She passed away 3 months to the day before she would have retired. And the day after her funeral, this job posted. And my husband said, "Hey, I think your mom's talking to you." This was my mom's final gift. And so I said I wasn't going to do it, but we did. My husband found the job and applied, and I'm finishing year 13 as the superintendent of the Evergreen School District in beautiful Northwest Montana, where I'm in the place I love, with the people I love, doing the work I love, and I just feel very blessed and grateful. This is my 30th year in education, and while there are things I don't always like, there are things I come into I don't enjoy, I never dread going to work. And I love the people I work with and the kids I work for and the community, and I just feel really blessed.
It was truly a gift, I can say, not just for you, but I think even for the people that you've been working with. So thank you for being vulnerable and also sharing that, right? I'm sure that must have been a hard time, but definitely a big decision to make.
Yeah, it was. It was huge. I mean, it was a very quick decision, and we sold half of everything we owned and moved halfway across the country. We knew no one. We had no friends, no family, no connections. And so it reminds you too of the power of community and connections and how important it is to get connected, because we had no one. It was just my husband and me and our 9-year-old daughter when we moved. And so we became very involved in the community, our daughter in her school. I mean, and that changes everything. So
Definitely. Definitely a leap of faith as well, not just for you, but
yeah,
also your family.
definitely. Definitely. Yes.
Yeah. But overall, I think I would love to know, I think, from your perspective now, you were mentioning about how middle school was not your area of expertise, right? And how that I think paved the way for where you are also now, right? In some way or the other. Uh,
Hmm.
you mentioned about student engagement, and that's what we're primarily going to be talking about here. But with the kind of journey that you've taken, I think I would love to know a little bit about where does your connection with these students come from, right? How do you build that sort of connection, number one? And then maybe talk about how do we get that into our classroom and get these kids engaged?
And of course, I don't have answers. I just have ideas,
Yeah.
right? And I say that over and over because it's different for every person in every circumstance. And you can't just generalize one thing to another. But for me, I think it's harder to build those connections and relationships the farther you are from the classroom,
Hmm.
right? It was much easier when I was a classroom teacher. When I was a building principal, gosh, I loved it. And one of my big things on engagement as a principal was to make sure I engaged with staff
All right.
very regularly, very routinely. I visited every class every week. Well, when you're visiting every class every week, and I think at the height I had maybe 54 classroom teachers. I mean, that's a lot of visits, and they weren't always long and in depth. Sometimes it was a Friday afternoon and I hadn't popped in, and I'm, hello, happy Friday. Hello, happy Friday. And sometimes you get in there and you end up teaching a 20-minute math lesson with a teacher because it's fun and enjoyable. But you also, while you're building credibility and you're seeing what's happening in classrooms and you're learning about the culture and academics going on in your building, you're also connecting with staff and building relationships, and you're doing the same thing with kids because they see you in all their classes, and they expect that you're going to be in there. And even as a district superintendent now, where I'm not inside a school with students, I try to be very intentional. I do expect our building principals to be in every classroom every week still. And I try very hard as a district leader, and I'm in a small district. So I want to note that if I had a district of 100,000 kids, I could not do this, right? But I think you can designate people who can. I still work hard to visit, interact with, communicate with, have some kind of interaction with every staff member once a month. And so I try to get in classes. I try to see what's happening. Those relationships are huge. One of the coolest things, because it's harder when you're removed from the classroom and then removed from the building where the most important people are, kids. This was so cool. This was just probably, gosh, not even a month ago. We wrote a grant for our vocational practical arts class at our junior high school, 5th through 8th grade school. And our 7th, 8th graders have the opportunity to take this vocational practical arts class, and they do, finance and budgeting and balancing a checkbook and woodworking and measuring and a lot of things. Well, one of their cool things is they get to build something with wood. They get to design something. With our grant, we bought some Dremel tools. Man, they love those things. And so I've been popping in, seeing what they're doing and checking in. And The kids every year make stuff, and a bunch of them will make something and give it to a parent or a family friend or a favorite staff member. Last year, one of the kids made this elaborate toolbox. I mean, from scratch, measured. You think about the math skills, and cut it and painted it and stained it and gave it to our secretary, who's our longest term employee in the whole district. She will be finishing 35 years here this year. And she has an impact on kids to that level. When they had a chance to choose somebody, they chose her. And this year, for the first time, I've been here 13 years, a student made something for me. And I'm like, I'm the superintendent. I'm not even in the schools. But, I really pride myself when she made me, it was a state of Montana.
Mm-hmm.
And it had our Wolverine logo in it, and she cut it herself and stained it. And then it had my name on it, and it had our Wolverine logo and my Georgia Bulldogs logo, because I'm a big Georgia Bulldogs fan. And it was very personalized. It was very special to me. It's hanging on my shelf. But I take pride in, when I'm in the buildings, the kids know who I am. They know my name. I mean, I try, I always, at the beginning of the year, go in every classroom and introduce myself. And again, I'm in a smaller district, right? I can do that. But really, I think it's taking advantage of proactive opportunities.
Right.
Because many times, particularly in this role, when you're removed from the classroom where the most important work's happening, and you're removed from the building, you can get disconnected easily.
Right.
Which can, you can get disengaged, and you can lose that heart and that passion. And so for me, it's about proactive engagement, because so many times when I'm involved, unfortunately, it can be over something negative that's happened. And, if I'm dealing with a discipline hearing or a difficult staff situation or a hard parent circumstance, having those positive connections and relationships first go a long way toward working through a challenge. And so it's very important to me to be proactive in building those relationships and connections with staff and students and families and community members and civic organizations, because it goes a long way. When it's kind of like that analogy they'll give you, you got to invest before you can withdraw. And so I don't always do it perfectly, and there's certainly room for improvement, but I work very hard to proactively invest in our people.
Right. And I absolutely love this term, proactive engagement. I think one of the reasons why is because I think we do sometimes have a lot on our plates, right? And while we want to engage with the people that are relevant, or at least cannot say relevant, but are the ones who are making the decision, or, who need that sort of support, even with its kids, whether it's the staff members, I think just proactively being there in their space also creates that sense of belongingness for them. Right?
Well, belonging's I've spent a lot of my research and education on belonging, and, we all want a place. We all want to fit in. I mean, I remember dropping our daughter off at college. She graduates in 5 weeks. I remember dropping her off her freshman year of college, her father and I, and she was playing soccer for this college where she attends. And when I got ready to say goodbye to her, she's crying, I'm crying. My husband's like, oh my gosh, what do I do with them? And we got in the car, and I was just a wreck. I mean, this baby I'd raised her whole life, and I'm just leaving her. And, we drove home 3.5 hours. We got home. She called that night, and she had her name in the locker room, and she had friends to sit with at dinner.
Yeah.
And she had this instant friend group. And immediately, while I missed her desperately, my heart was at ease, because she'd found her people. And I don't care how old we are, and I don't care what our role is, we need our people. I mean, one of the things I love about our office staff here, we're in a district building, so we don't have students on this hall. And the majority of the staff, they get to, every day by choice, they have lunch together.
Yeah.
There's something about feeling like I was included in lunch today versus everybody had lunch and I wasn't. I mean, even for an adult, that's hard. And so I think that we've got to be so mindful of how powerful belonging is, and how even more powerful lack of belonging is.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, being left out, being excluded, it hurts. I don't care if you're 12 or 22 or 52, right? People want to have a place. And so I think when we can get students, and I connect that to engagement too, because I think when we can really genuinely engage students, help students to choose engagement, they're more likely to advocate for themselves, to seek to be empowered, to try to fit in. It doesn't always work. I mean, the student whose boyfriend just broke up with her, she doesn't care about her math test,
Not at all.
right? But I think too, there's a little bit of a misnomer sometimes when we talk about engagement. Engagement isn't just a student's compliant, a student's busy, a student's paying attention, a student's participating. Those are all wonderful things, and it's a start. It's much better than them sleeping, right?
Yeah.
But just because they're busy or occupied or compliant doesn't mean they're engaged, right? We don't choose if a student's engaged, right? True engagement comes from the student choosing it, him or herself, right? We're not, I think sometimes, do I think that charisma and passion and knowledge and enthusiasm makes a difference for a student in class? Absolutely, right? But we're not here just to entertain, right? It's not just that every day we should be entertaining enough that a student stays awake and pays attention. Yes, we want them staying awake and paying attention. And yes, we want to be charismatic. And yes, we want to be a dynamic teacher. But true engagement comes from within, right? That student who fully engages, it's a cognitive investment.
Yeah.
Right? It's not just I'm awake and I'm following your directions.
Yep.
It's I am fully engaged. I'm fully cognitively there. I've got curiosity. I'm really inspired to do more. I'm willing to persist. I'm willing to try a little harder than I think capable because I'm so locked into this. And engagement isn't always pretty. It's not always thrilling, right? You can be highly engaged and be very quiet. Engagement doesn't mean always activity or sparks or dazzle, right? I think that sometimes we give a bad feel to the only way to engage is to entertain. And so I think we've got to really set up expectations where there's that support, there's that belonging, there's that safety net for when you fail, that cognitive engagement is hard and it demands persistence and not giving up. Right? I mean, I'm watching a kid really struggle on a math problem, and I wasn't sure he was going to get it either, just to be honest, right? But man, the kid was so locked into the math problem, and so I think partly wanted to please the teacher, right? Really wanted that teacher to see, but man, to care about that teacher that much, to have that kind of opinion of, I want someone to see me work hard.
Yeah.
And when the kid got it, I think I was as surprised as the kid was, but to watch that cognitive challenge and that engagement that doesn't have to be entertainment.
Right. How I've loved listening to this particular section of yours, and I'll tell you why. So a couple of things that you mentioned. One was the piece about the lunch, like having lunch together. It's a choice that you make. Right? Yeah. It's a choice to have lunch with maybe the staff members or even with the students, right? It's a choice that you make. Now, that is one. The second that you mentioned was about engagement, not just being about compliance, right? And I think I learned that a very hard way, and very sadly, it was almost a month or 2 months after I'd started teaching, right? So I wish someone had told me this earlier. I swear, I really think I wish somebody would have told me that it's not about entertaining kids. It's not about, just having the kids listen to you. Just because they're looking at you doesn't mean they're really listening.
Yeah. Right? And what we found is oftentimes adults, parents, caregivers, teachers, administrators often think students are more engaged than they actually report they are.
Yes.
Right? Because they have to look.
Yes.
They did what they were told. They followed through.
Yeah.
And so we assume engagement, and then sometimes maybe we let that go and we assume that's enough when really they're not fully cognitively engaged and they're not fully committed. And we know that disengagement is significantly influenced by boredom, by frustration. So again, I go back to, yes, do we want dynamic, skilled, passionate, high quality teachers? Yes, because we know that boredom can be a huge cause for disengagement. But we can't assume just because we are dynamic and passionate and knowledgeable and credible that automatically means the kid's engaged. Right. It's just and you build those relationships with kids, and
Right.
that's how you're like, that kid's really with me today. It's, have you ever
Yeah.
been in a conversation with somebody and they're not listening? I mean, right, right. And they hadn't heard a word you said, and they're fully compliant and they're fully responding, and yet they haven't processed anything you've said. It's human nature. We see it happen all the time. And so I think we just have to be really aware that when a kid gets engaged, that promotes more engagement, which promotes more engagement,
Yeah.
which promotes more engagement. And yes, might we be in a circumstance where kids are in a class and I was in a class last year. I am weak-hearted here. The kids were dissecting in science, and it was seventh grade science. And I happened to walk in, it's toward the end of the year, and they were dissecting these huge rats. And this is like in May. And I was like, I can't do this. I can't stay in here. I mean, I'm going to throw up, I think. And then I thought, oh my gosh, Laurie, these are like seventh graders. You can't act like one. I mean, they have to stay in here. So I'm trying to get it together and act like I'm all cool. And the kids, they had this diagram on the teacher had done a fantastic job of this is what you're supposed to do in all the directions. And not what I noticed, then when I'm cut up in a pregnant rat, it was horrible. Oh, but what I noticed is these kids, they had the directions on what they were supposed to do. Okay, compliance. They were doing it. It was way beyond that. They were leaving their station, which they're not allowed to do, right? They had their station to go help a friend
Yeah.
correctly do it. To go say, no, that's not this piece. It's this part. This is what you're supposed to identify. And here they were not compliant in some respects, and yet highly cognitively engaged over something I was grossed out over. And there were stations, I mean, they were probably, gosh, I don't know, 10, 12 rats being dissected from different groups. And these kids were not only following the directions and doing what they're saying and being very safe. They had their goggles and they were using the scalpel correctly and no one was playing. But man, they were like in their disgustion. Oh, this is. You want to talk about active engagement, and we know when kids can have hands-on experiences, when the learning is more active, they're more likely to cognitively engage more, right? The teacher could have just done it himself at the front.
Yeah.
Could have just shown pictures, could have just shown a video, right? But that deep came from kids having the opportunity to do it and then watching them want to help other people do it because they had such an opportunity to be empowered to do it on their own.
And
it was gross. It was really gross.
I'm sure.
But it was so cool.
I think I'm quite sure that it must have not been a very pretty sight. But just from that perspective, I think I resonate with what you're saying completely, that just because you're not supposed to do something doesn't mean that they're not engaged, right? And if they're still on task. So let's say, and I think this is sort of a definition in my head around engagement about if the child or the student is on task, right? But in a way that they're doing it the way they need to do it. For them to process it, they're engaged. That's my sort of definition around this. But I would love to know about what it is for you and how do you see cognitive engagement and how can teachers or even other superintendents make sure that that is something that can be seen more tangibly, so especially around cognitive engagement?
I think one of the reasons we see kids sometimes become disenchanted with school, particularly as they get older, is, it feels like an adult environment. Everything happens to them. They
Right.
don't have a choice, right? And I think the best engagement is when it's by choice,
Right.
not by force. And so when kids are freely collaborating, freely talking with peers, freely learning, now there's always a slippery slope, right? They're much more likely to get engaged. I mean, I think of two things. One, my first year in the district, and I visit a lot of classrooms still as a superintendent, and I was visiting our music teacher's classroom, like a 7th and 8th grade chorus class. And I walked in and it was still new. And so I'm not sure teachers were super comfortable with me coming in, and I didn't, but I walk in and the teacher was having a little bit of trouble they were on the risers singing, and the teacher was having a little trouble with classroom management. And the kids just kept talking, and he was trying to get one section to sing something. The other section wasn't being super attentive.
Yeah.
And he sees me, I see him. We're both kind of like, what do you do? I'm thinking I should leave, but then I don't want to look like I've given up, And he says, stop. I'll give you X seconds, like 20 seconds, I can't remember, 60 seconds, to talk about anything but this class. Go. We're
Yeah.
both standing there. It's the longest minute. I was like, right. And they're, just talking. And he gets toward the end and he's like, 3, 2, 1. Okay, we're on stanza, whatever. I stayed the rest of the class.
Yeah.
It was the greatest use or waste or loss, I don't know what you want to call it, of a minute. I call it use because he was outnumbered. They're social beings. They weren't bought in. The minute he gave them a minute to get it out of their system, man, they were locked in, engaged. And I think the awareness of young adolescents and the brain and how kids operate, I was just so amazed by his awareness that kids not following directions and kids being social and kids talking and being off task isn't bad behavior necessarily. Maybe it's not appropriate at that time, right? But it doesn't mean bad. And then that takes me to my second thought on this. I have been an administrator of some sort, my word, for this is year 24.
Okay.
Should have taught longer. I do love the work though. And so I don't know how many meetings I have led in my career with staff that I value and I think value me, and that we have good, reciprocal, professional, kind, respectful relationships. I cannot think of a meeting I've led where an adult didn't talk to a colleague about something I wasn't talking about, where an adult didn't check a text, where an adult didn't laugh at their friend who did something silly that might have interrupted my flow. I can't think of one, not one in 24 years where an adult didn't get off topic or off task or talk when they weren't supposed to, or come late or do something they shouldn't. I don't have a lot of problem with people coming late because that's a big deal for me.
Yeah.
But, and they're not bad. They're not bad people. They're doing a good job. They're doing good work. And if I were to freak out every time one of them did that, what kind of an environment would I have? We are social beings. And sometimes somebody can get off task and be doing a good job at the same time. Right? Is it what we love? No. Would I prefer they're not talking while I'm talking? Sure. But they're whispering really quietly. They do it real fast. They quit or they check a text or something.
Yeah.
And we're all okay. Now, if it was pervasive and loud and disrespectful and aggressive, totally different. And do we have kids who do that and it's not appropriate? Absolutely. Do we need to take care of it? Absolutely. But I think we've got to realize there's a part of human nature for engagement, that part of engagement comes from social interaction, from collaboration. And sometimes that means you're going to end up talking about something else.
Right.
And if it's just for a minute, I mean, even when those kids were dissecting rats, I remember they were comparing it to other stuff that had nothing to do with class.
Right.
Nothing to do with class. They were still on task. And so I think we've got to let go of some of our control.
Yeah.
If we really want to empower students to choose engagement or to be in circumstances where we're not sitting with them to make the choice to say, pay attention, pay attention, pay attention, right? We want them to advocate for themselves and be able to make those choices on their own.
Right.
That we gotta have a little wiggle room sometimes. And are there times there's no wiggle room? Absolutely. We are taking a test today. I want to know what you know, not what your buddy knows. And I'm not going to tolerate it at all. Don't even look at each other. And are there appropriate times for that? Absolutely. But I think overall, we've got to realize that we've got to build a classroom kids want to take ownership in, want to take leadership in, want to engage in. And sometimes that takes sharing that power.
And I think I'm just going to get back to the point about how that sort of engagement comes also when you empower the students, right? Mm-hmm. When they have a choice, or at least they have a say in what their learning needs to be as well, right? And I think it gets me back to your book as well on where we talk about We Belong. And you talk about SEL-infused classroom management a lot, right? Mm-hmm. And in a district like yours at Evergreen, where you have a very high percentage of students qualifying for free and reduced lunch as well, right? Mm-hmm. How do you build that sense of belongingness that is strong enough to overcome these external barriers also that come into the door?
I think something that's really big for us is building community. Right. And that we're all a part of the community and we all bring different things to the community. And you may have a different skill or background or culture or belief or knowledge or something than I do. Yeah. And it's how do we all work together? Because the best classroom management, the best belonging, and the more they belong, the less classroom management you're going to have, right? Is when it's as part of a community. Case in point, I was talking about staff meetings. I do remember a staff meeting one time where two people, and they apparently whatever they were talking about was really funny. I mean, they weren't trying to be disrespectful. They weren't trying to be rude, but they kept on and they're laughing at each other, and it got where it was enough noise that it was distracting, and it was distracting me. And these are two great people, by the way. I didn't have to deal with it because you know what? The community did, right? I didn't have to say something. I didn't embarrass them. I didn't call them out in front of their friends and colleagues. I didn't have to. The community was set up such that that type of behavior was not acceptable. And so the community, one of their colleagues was like, stop it, you're being rude. And then they're like, oh, right? I know that that's not going to happen every day in a class of 12-year-olds or 17-year-olds, but it can under the right circumstances. And so when we build community where all of us know the same expectations, we help build the expectations. We come to consensus over many of the expectations. I think it makes a huge difference because you have a community who wants to do well and doesn't want to disappoint their friends, doesn't want to disappoint their colleagues. It's not about compliance anymore.
Right.
It's about maintaining my belongingness in this community. And when I don't control my behavior and I lash out and I don't regulate what I'm doing, and we understand sometimes there are reasons kids can't, and we work through that and we help them learn. Every kid is unique and has different needs and abilities. But when we can build that community of learners where we support each other, and the majority of the time people are choosing engaging in what is being done instead of just complying, you don't need as much classroom management. And I think about too, in our district, one of the things I'm really, really proud of, I mentioned earlier, a kid who his girlfriend just broke up with him, doesn't care about his science test. He just doesn't. A kid who's hungry isn't super interested in whether or not they turn in their social studies homework. So in our district, we're in our 4th year now, all through grant funding, different grants. Man, we've written a lot of grants in this district. We now employ a family and community liaison who connects families to services, because what we don't want is a kid to not be able to engage, to feel that empowerment because of things outside of their control. Right? I can't, because I don't have any clean clothes to wear. I've got an abscessed tooth and it's in such pain and I can't get care for it. How am I supposed to pay attention or care about complying? I don't have food. I don't know how I'm going to get to school, those kind of things. And so our liaison connects families. Her focus is literacy. She does a lot of literacy work for us. But over the past 3 years, in a 3-year term, she has helped connect 843 families to almost 1,900 services. And I'm talking about medical care, mental health care, dental care, food, clothing, transportation, insurance, after-school care, Medicaid paperwork, all those types of things. She's connected 843 families to almost 1,900 services. With that group, when we've looked at kids before they had one of those services and after being connected to one of those services, we have seen a 56% improvement in student attendance for those groups connected to service, a 69% improvement in student behavior as documented by formal discipline referrals, and a 69% improvement in English language arts and mathematics performance as documented by a progress monitoring assessment. When kids have the resources they need, they're much more likely to be able to attend school, regulate behavior, and achieve at a higher rate.
Right.
Then it's much easier to engage.
Of course.
Right? I mean, it's really hard to engage when you're hungry. And so, and I don't say that lightly. I mean it genuinely. And so for us, it's about making sure our kids have the services they need so that they're not barriers to engaging in class and learning how to be empowered and improving their own outcomes. Because ultimately, while we want to help improve student outcomes, at some point they're going to be on their own and they're going to have to advocate for themselves for improving their outcomes.
That's so powerful. I think I was almost about to clap when you gave me the numbers. I think.
Yeah, me too.
I think it is definitely, or at least I believe it's definitely a cause for pride and joy, definitely in your district, and the fact that this there are these people who are working maybe day in and day out, just getting these services ready for these students, right? Like, so at the end of the day, it's all about the children, right?
Yep.
Whether you're doing it or whether your staff is doing it, it's all about the children. And I think I absolutely love
Well,
that.
it's a team effort, right?
It's
There's not any I here. There's a lot of work going on, and we have a really strong business, civic, faith-based community as well that puts a lot of effort and time into supporting our community. And our school's the hub of the community. We're only 3 miles wide, so um, it's a joy to be here. And yes, do we have kids who struggle? Absolutely. Do we have adults who struggle? Absolutely. Community members who struggle. I mean, right? It's part of human nature. And so our goal is to provide a safe, joyful experience where
Yeah,
kids can improve their outcomes,
right.
right? Because if we don't have those safety measures, and that includes physical and emotional safety, that mental safety, that belonging,
Yeah.
it's really, really hard to care about anything else. And it's really hard to engage. We got to get the right parameters in place before we can ask kids to authentically engage in academic learning.
And I know we probably overshot a little bit in terms of our time, but just the last question, I think, in terms of the future of engagement and resilience, maybe you can anticipate the question that might be coming up too. We know that the world is changing fast, right? And when we talk about what's coming up, we already know there's AI, there are new career pathways, also shifting mental health needs as well, right? And we know that your district, Evergreen, has a vision to equip all students with the resiliency to adapt as well. So, as a leader, how do you keep your staff also engaged and resilient enough so that they can model this for the kids?
Yeah, and that the $1 million question, right? One of the most challenging
Yeah,
things that I'm seeing with our district, our region, our state, our nation is teacher recruitment and retention,
right.
right? Um, it's so hard. And, we have staff that, like I just told you, our secretary who's hitting year 35, our crossing guard is hitting year 29. I've
Right.
got I think six or seven, seventh and eighth grade teachers who've been teaching together for 18 years on the same hall.
All right.
Um, but now the recruitment into the profession is particularly challenging, right?
Right.
And I think it's a number of things. I mean, in our area, we are in a resort community. And
Mm.
so the cost of living is just off the chart. If you didn't buy a house here 10 years ago, it's going to be really hard to buy one now. It's just very, very challenging to recruit. And a lot of people who are already here already had their house or had a living circumstance. And then that retention, the job is just so hard.
Right.
It used to, I don't know what it used to be. I sound like I'm really old now, but we are responsible for so much.
Yeah.
And then, out there is that test score. And it's like, oh my gosh, I can't even get to the test score. I'm trying to make sure they're fed and they're safe and that they have a place to go home and they have someone to sit with at lunch and they're building a community of belonging. And of course, academics is a very high priority for us, but we also know how important arts and athletics and all of our extracurriculars are, because some kids will tolerate their English class because they want to play football. I'm okay with that. Just
Yeah.
get here and be around you and we can surround you. And so when I think about teacher recruitment and retention, I think, more about retention because recruitment is just so hard because it's so expensive to live here. But most of our teachers that we're interviewing for next year are coming from out of state. And
Yeah.
so they apparently they found some way to get here. So I'm excited about that. But when I think about retaining teachers and teacher mental health and teacher support and teacher belonging, it's equally important, right? They got to feel like they're cared for, they're valued. It matters when they're not here, that their voice is honored and listened to. And sometimes, we're wrong. Sometimes I make a wrong decision, a bad decision. I don't
Right.
like to. I don't think I am in the moment, or I wouldn't do it,
Yeah.
right? But when we do, we've got to be able to acknowledge, well, that wasn't smart. Ooh, I could have done that differently, or I'm sorry for miscommunicating, or I wish I'd been more clear. And, we've got to set up a situation where teachers want to come to work, where they find joy in being here, where the culture is one that on those hard days, they can still survive, because there are a lot of hard days.
Yeah.
And, the students gosh, now I really sound like I'm one of those back in the day. But, every kid's walking around with a computer in their hand
Yeah.
and a phone. And it turns out we all will have calculators in our pocket.
Yeah.
And, it's just, and the social media influence is astounding. I can't even quantify what every kid walking around with a screen and social media has done in the last decade, and how hard that has made it on teachers
It has.
to still, and compete's not the right word because we're not here to compete and entertain, but my goodness, they got that instant gratification from a screen, and then I want you to choose to cognitively engage.
Right.
I just think we've got to set up environments where teachers feel supported, they feel valued. When there are problems, we help them address them and we don't ignore them. And, we're willing to admit when we're wrong and can do a better job, and that this is a team effort. This isn't I did this, you did that. And I'm very much the mentality I have my entire, maybe early in my administrative career. To begin with, maybe not. I didn't want to be there. I was immature. I certainly didn't know what I was doing. But for a long time, my mentality has been, if what you're doing is legal, moral, ethical, and safe, even if I think it's stupid, I'm going to try and get behind you and support you.
Right.
Because we all make bad decisions. We all do things a way we wish we hadn't. So as long as what you're doing is legal, moral, ethical, and safe, I can get behind you on mistakes. I can get behind you and support you. I'll sit next to you in that parent conference. But man, if you're illegal, immoral, and ethical, and safe, don't ask me to sit on the same side with you. Because we're not going to treat our kids that way. Right? We're going to provide legal, moral, safe, ethical environments for all of our people. And so it's a lot easier for me to admit when I've made a mistake and I've done something wrong, because I want to support staff when each of us does that, because it's going to happen.
Absolutely.
I don't know if I answered your question at all.
In some ways, yes. But I completely agree with you that in these changing times, all that you need right now is support, right? The way you provide it might change, or the way you maybe are creating those spaces for them might be different, but that's like the core of anything that you might do, whether it's for your staff or for your school, right? So overall, I think it's been a wonderful conversation, Dr. Barron. I think one thing that I'm taking back definitely is about this sort of community, and thinking about engagement not just as a teaching strategy, right, but more as a community-based, more relationship sort of strategy, right? And I think it's been a pleasure to hear what you've been doing for the odd number of years, right, and a lot of years, right? So I don't think every time that you say that, oh, maybe I sound old. Well, you have a lot of experience in this.
I've been there a minute.
You've been there a minute, right?
And I do want to say too that I'm still growing and learning. I don't have it down right either. And there are days that, I think, gosh, how could I do a better job? What can I do differently? How can I do a better job of building community and engaging the people that I serve? And so it's a constant awareness and challenge to continue to try to meet those expectations.
And one of the reasons why we wanted to speak to you and get on this podcast was because of this, right? About just talking about community, right? While we were talking about student engagement, we know that you've been great at creating a community within not just your school and your schooling system, but your community as well, right? Where you become the hub of, not you, but your entire district has become that hub of, say, dependency, right? In a great way. So
I'm really proud of it.
Yeah, as you should be, because that's what we do at Toma Club also, right? We're constantly thinking about, okay, community, collaboration, and communication. If those are there, there's nothing better that you need.
The work's a lot easier, isn't it?
It is.
Right?
It is.
Yeah, well, I love my job. I love the people. I love my community. And I'm just honored to be in a career that is very fulfilling. And I'm very proud of the Evergreen School District and our staff and the work they're doing to support kids and each other in this community every day. Yeah. I'm thankful to be a part of it. Thankful to be one part of the team.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Laurie. I think, again, wonderful conversation to have with you. And
thank you so much.